Okay, another talk with Caleb Lamont. So,
Hello.
what's on your mind, Caleb?
Oh, not a lot at the moment.
You said you had some lazy days, but that can be really good. Uh,
Yeah,
sort
I
of, yeah. Sort of give the
I have
body time
been.
to speak a little bit.
Yeah, I wish it were that way. I've been busy, but I haven't. Basically, what I mean is I've been physically lazy, but very busy. It's not been like that therapeutic. But I've had a lot of time to myself. That's kind of therapeutic. So
Yeah, you need to rest sometimes, right? Just take.
yeah.
You be lazy watching like South Park. That's what I used to do.
Well, I mean, it's like this year has kind of been recouped from 10 years of or 10 plus years of just working my ass off pounding. Like my whole 20s was working
Mm.
like fucking crazy, just working.
You do the truck driving, right?
I did a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Did a lot of stuff.
You know, I've been thinking about like my path through the 20s also. Like, I only like the jobs where I can like listen to audiobooks or podcasts meanwhile I work, but because otherwise it feels so fucking pointless.
Yeah,
I can imagine driving a truck is really nice in that if you like to listen to stuff educational.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we have a bunch of things to talk about, I guess. Uh, I had this injury, so I've been in bed for 2 weeks, and I couldn't stop when I was in the rabbit hole, so to speak. Um, and I always been this like historical. I just go with the historical stuff, but at some point, that's it's like the world's situation today has starting to bridge with what I already learned. When I focus on Sweden.
Yeah, well, I've been like into a lot of alternative history ever since I was 16 and reading all of these different things about secret societies and all kinds of things like that.
Mm.
Sweden never came up,
No.
but with the things that you're getting into, it's like your perspective on Sweden intersects with every avenue that I've looked into and adds color to uh, every aspect of it
Yeah. What they
that
did
I've
was
never
really
thought of.
like, well, like what Sweden did in the 1500s was so political incorrect, and they want to try to erase Sweden's effect on world history, like play it down and not even mention. Especially the education in Sweden, we are getting told that all those happenings, since the Vasa, they are just those tyrants. But it really started with this thing I was talking about with the more present day, because there's a guy on YouTube. His name is Matthias Andersson, and he only does videos in Swedish, but he's so fucking knowledgeable. He's an ex-military guy. I've been like going through uh, probably 50 of his videos, and he's like doing on the field and doing a really good job. And I suspect that his parents or a brother or someone, this kind of research has been going through the family, I suspect, almost. So it's so the occult modern history of Sweden, you could say, or the hidden. Uh, but he highlighted a family called Wallenberg, or Wallenberg, we say, and their family motto is to act without being noticed. You could say, rendered in English, to act without being noticed.
Hmm.
Also, yeah, that's their motto, and they are the most. They are not the richest people in Sweden in terms of personal assets. This family has only been existing like 5 generations. And the funny thing is that they always take the same name and have a system. They have a dynasty system, exactly like a royal house. But
Hmm.
the interesting thing that I found that nobody really highlighted is that they were a part of the conspiracy group that killed Gustav III. So they were sort of the bankers and are really they are like controlling the Rothschilds and the JP Morgans. They are like on the same level, but these are like the hidden rulers. And I can
And
prove it.
you said that they're 5 generations old.
Yeah.
How old were they when they were involved with that assassination?
This is 1790, 1800s.
So maybe that was what got them started,
Yes,
or,
they
or
took
were,
over the
were they
banking.
already started?
They took over the
Okay.
banking system. So they today this is really interesting. Ericsson is a company that they own. And they sort of stole it with an assassination from a Swiss guy. And this Ericsson company is the leading company in the world when it comes to telecommunication. It covers 40% of all telecommunication on the globe. Is owned by Ericsson. America is totally controlled by Ericsson, the telecommunication. And what I found was that they originating being spy masters, this family. That's like their trade.
Hmm.
And they were the first to develop and own the cryptograph. And they have been controlling the telecommunication network throughout Europe or throughout the world, so to speak, since it began. Because they sort of give the technology to countries, but then they can see everything that's going on that is communicated across those channels.
Reminds me of this. See, this is so interesting, man. It's like
Yeah.
everything that I've researched. You you know I you have this like Sweden version of it,
Yeah.
because like that reminds me of the Menzies clan, who were involved with producing this cryptograph thing that they I don't remember if they gave it to the Nazis for them to use, or if it's what they invented for the Allies to decrypt
Yeah.
what the Nazis were.
Exactly.
I can't remember which way it was,
Yeah,
but
but
yeah,
they
this
could see
clan,
every communication between every block. Man, this
yeah,
this is so huge. Even I think even Tolkien took this into reference because Ericsson is before the telecommunication. The first central bank or the bank that unified all banks is in Switzerland. And originally, the way to take out a deposit, throughout the world when the globalization sort of started, when we became more connected, we had telecommunication networks like fax, or when you can send signals over those lines to the banks, between the different banks, so they could sort of make very fast deposits wherever you were. This is in the beginning of the 1900s, so sort of more modern. But it's interesting that this central hub for the telecommunication networks was a tower, very symbolical. And you also
Hmm.
had like a tower in Sweden that were the real control over this Swiss tower, so to speak. And this could be like, you know, the all-seeing eye, the two towers reference also, because it really is the all-seeing eye when it covers. Whenever, you know, they give the ring when you ring someone on the phone, they say you ring. You see, it's I think this could be a sort of a reference that Tolkien went with in a mythology, more mythology, or what do you say, mythology, mythology
Yeah.
perspective, you know, because you have the ring of powers that was given to the different races, the ring of
Right.
power, and they gave this technology to the different countries, but they don't even understand the fucking technology, and the makers of the technology that was forged in the Mount Doom, you could almost say, that is seated in Sweden. And you know, Tolkien, he understood Swedish. He could speak Swedish. So the Bara-dur tower, bara det dur means like only, it's a note, it's a bass note, a D-dur,
Hmm.
a D sound. The D-dur.
Hmm.
Bara D-dur. Bara means only in Swedish. So it's a
Hmm.
very cryptic and a very interesting research I've been like
As if to
slipping
say
into.
only the low notes.
Yes, I wonder what dur is in English. Wait. M- d-
Der. It would be like door,
ja, men
maybe.
dur, vänta.
DUR, there's no
Major.
word for
It's a
that.
major. Okay.
Huh.
D major.
Oh, okay.
Bara D-dur, so this is very interesting, I think. Bara D-dur, alltså D major only, is the sort of the translation of bara-dur. Eller
Hmm.
bara-dur, only major. Only D major. Well, to jump forward, Ericsson control 40% of the telecommunication network today, and real power is possessed within information, of course. That's the first step. When power take over another country, they first take over the information system and doctrinate the people, and then comes the economical. So if they control both the information and the economical, then it's fucking checkmate, you know. And this is all connected to the world's oldest bank, the Riksbanken in Sweden, which they took control and still have control over. That creates the money from nothing. Sweden was first with
Yeah.
that, also with this kind of creation of paper notes.
Yeah.
Can you see what I'm talking about here, Caleb? This has been starting to.
Absolutely.
Trump even he went full blown attack against Ericsson. I saw the other
Really.
day over 100 Americans are filing lawsuits against Ericsson now because it has been starting to crack up, and we see scandals coming out. A lot of scandals, and the more Trump made a commission to have 100% insight into Ericsson's activities. And you can,
Wow.
yeah, and the Ericsson was caught spying on Trump when he was the president also. So you can clearly
Uh,
see who, where the power bases now are. I even heard that the Chinese officially said that the power base of the Western world were in the bay where the Central Bank of Sweden is. This is something that Gustav Adolf II sort of embarked on when he created that bank during the 30 Years' War in Europe. when he kicked out the Catholics. So the
Hmm.
moment when they assassinate his predecessor, what do you say, his grandchild? No,
Okay.
not his grandchild, but later, 200 years later, his family, the Vasa line, are still in
His
power.
descendant.
Descendant,
Yeah.
yes. So the moment they take out his descendant, uh, those, they sort of took over the system that the Vasa kings already had created, and they are still today like toppling and building on top of that. And it's what I've been talking about all the time. With the Templar networks are involved, all of this, the Templars. But I hate to say Templars. It's a more of a collective name for the 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 Jarl system, or the system of information gathering and information sharing within the different orders. It's really what they do. They are information transitioners almost, because spy mastery is the top.
Okay, I got to bring something up.
Yeah.
Um, I'll work into it slowly.
Mm.
Um, First of all, we had spoke about the witches on broomsticks, the wild ride.
Yes.
You know, they have this thing called the wild ride, and they have artwork about it where it's like these horsemen riding out in this big hunt. You had said that that has its origins in the Bach Saga, where every year there would be um, from the center ringland, there would be riders who would ride out to all of the other ringlands to deliver information.
Well, knowledge. It's a gatherer
Is
also.
this related to what you just made reference to?
Yes. It's all about information system. That's like the core structure in a society or a civilization, you could say. The information gathering and giving. That's what a saga is. A saw, you say something and you receive something. It's the most. It's one of the most ancient systems that the mankind has used. And the faster the communication system can get, it's what we will go with. So before the electronics or the electric systems that are required to make a telecommunication network that we have today, you use like birds. It was the fastest, but they can also be shot down. It's very risky. But before that, we had caravan, which is a trail of but a caravan is the originating, the first, as I see it, in the practical sense. But as
But
time,
line
yeah,
of sight was used in some places.
yeah, of course. But the raw gathering of information from person to person, that is the saga, or the telling and receiving, which is really the communication that is the most important, I think. Of course, you can have like signals for emergency, but I'm talking about what's gluing empires together. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's really the information in the more cultural and enhancing way, communication, direct communication. But this is really where the power really resides within an empire or a nation. So if you want to be sovereign, you need to also control the media is the first thing you need to control, so you can get the people with your cause or whatever. But to see how the ring of power has been given out to the races is a really good metaphor, I think. And they were all deceived because they all fell into darkness later because they couldn't control their empires. When you have another actor secretly tapping in and knowing every fucking act happening within the power system. I think it's really fucking interesting because this is, people say that money is power, but what really is power giving is information. And then today even the internet run through the Ericsson telecommunication, so they are increasing in power every day and have a global domination almost, at least in the Western world.
Yeah, there was this old movie called oh dang it, I forget what it's called. It was Keanu Reeves was in it, and it was based in the year 2021 or 2022, but the movie was like made back in the 80s, and it was talking about how like no communications are safe or whatever anymore. So what they did was, if they needed to get some really important information somewhere, they would stick it in somebody's brain, but like they wouldn't know what it was. But then he would like just get it from point A to point B. Then they would take it out of his brain. But in the movie, it's like everybody found out that he's the one who had it in his brain, so everybody was like chasing after him, trying to cut his head off.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Forget
talking.
what fucking movie that was.
That's a nice thing with movies. They're good and bad. But I mean, before movies, we had opera and the plays, and in the box saga they even have movies or plays in form of circus, the circus tradition. So they could like, but opera, you know, Gustav III is he dedicated his life to making plays, and so there's a lot we can uncover from the past by knowing the plays of that time. I saw that there was a play dramatizing the killing or the assassination of Gustav III, the end of the Vasa, so to speak. And it was so political incorrect during in Sweden at least, so they had to sort of play it in France, I think, underground scenes. And there's even like a museum today which is underground where you can see the costumes and everything from this place. Very famous apparently in the because he was sort of the pioneers of plays. I think this is really fucking interesting. I saw that was a version on YouTube. It's over 3 hours long. That are over 200 years old play, but it's like a movie, but in its more original form. I think it's nice. Very if you want to take a depth into the cultural mindset, the opera and all of this is very. I never really understood all the opera thing, but it's an aristocratic thing. Um, Something to look into actually. I mean, there must be
Yeah,
something to it with the opera.
well, I think there's a lot of mysterious. Whoops. There's a lot of mysterious stuff about William Shakespeare.
Yes, there's a story about him. Eeyore talked about William Shakespeare a little bit. The detail I never thought about Shakespeare is that he wrote his plays during a time when it was forbidden in the populace to have the knowledge of reading and writing. I mean,
Huh.
it must have been it must have been made very professionally, and this kind of knowledge. I think Hamilton is situated in Denmark. The story,
Hamlet, yeah.
it cannot be one guy making all of this, I think. Maybe
Well, I've
he's
heard
just a name on the paper, you know.
Commons Beaumont has a theory about it, um, and then there's a theory that it was Francis Bacon actually, and there's Michael Desarian mentions a different possibility in his Atlantis book. Talks about one of the people who it could have been,
Hmm.
but like you said, it could have been multiple people.
Yeah, it's like the
Uh,
Bible. It's a you
It
know.
was probably a secret society, like a whole lodge
Yes,
full of
yes.
people. But then again, it's like genius is rarely a manifestation of a group of people.
But it wasn't
You
available.
know,
And do you know the only book that existed at that time in Europe, as far as I know, was the Bible. And the way the Bible is
but
uh,
Francis Bacon was involved in that too.
in what?
Francis Bacon uh, was involved in putting the Bible together
Yeah, I can
for
imagine
King
that.
James.
Gustav
Yeah.
Vasa the first, he made his own version too, called the
Oh yeah.
Gustav Vasa's Bible. You can see it in museum. You know, it's there. So I don't know what they, but the big thing is was to put the Swedish language into text format, and from there it became like the example how to read and write in Swedish. Uh, so it it's in its cradle to do so. So that was it must have been taking hundreds of years before people in general were more literate, I think, because books was very expensive also. But with the printing press, of course, things started to happen. It's an interesting time, this 1500, I think, with John Dee also in England, this kind of mystic. There's a lot of theories, and the alien people, they think. I have heard theories that this was the time when when this the knowledge or the beginning of industrialization really started with that also. Um, you know, but I don't think it's aliens involved here, to be honest, because you can
Well,
sort of.
what's the alien theory? Because
Yeah, but
there's different ways to look at
it's like
that.
the aliens handed down a bunch of knowledge.
Well,
Uh,
John Dee literally um, altered his own consciousness in order to um, talk to something that
mm.
was perceived, at least, to be from somewhere else.
Yeah, but how
And
do we know this?
well, if you look at the story about
Yeah, but who
what
wrote
actually
that story?
happened, he was working with a colleague called Edward Kelly, and one of them would basically go into a trance. But like they would, John Dee would, one of them would like pull information like an oracle, right?
Mm.
And the other one would write it down.
Okay,
So,
yes.
so like the process involved altering their consciousness to the extent to where they perceived in a totally different way and got information from somewhere from their mind, whether it was interface with some entity or whatever. Science, we don't know the scientific explanation for what happened, but he said it was angels. And then there's the people who think that those angels were probably aliens or whatever. Who knows? But that's kind of how they did it. One of them would be the oracle, and the other one would write down.
You
the
know,
answers or whatever.
this is what I'm thinking because I'm like I think always like this. I'm like, okay, who the fuck is this guy even? And could he have been pressured by forces also to like smear his colleague? These are aspects that we will never maybe know. But I'm thinking like the way to look at John Dee from the perspective we have been getting is that he's some
But
kind
there's
of,
historical precedence for it.
yeah, of course. But
Or,
you
Apollo and the Oracle of Delphi, you know, the Oracle concept where
yeah,
um,
I
someone
know all of
goes
this.
goes in. Yeah,
But there are
yeah,
stories about him talking to like devils and demons and conjure all these kind of things. They were like laying with each other's wives also. There's a really
yeah. I
good,
don't know.
yeah,
That one does sound more like a smear campaign.
yeah. I saw this video on John D. It's like a 45 minute documentary on YouTube, and the way they presented it, was like John Dee is this kind of conjurer of demons, from a very religious point of view, and that becomes very signaling for me.
Well,
But
they had an exhibit a few years ago where they actually brought a lot of his a lot of the artifacts that John Dee had actually made these notes and
yeah,
everything,
that's what you're gonna look into if you wanna know the man more, his own.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at what he was writing down and the images that he was drawing. That stuff is literally intended to invoke demons and stuff. So that
Okay,
that is what he was trying to do.
well that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
then the
yeah,
perspective of a
he's
demon.
drawing these stars and putting these symbols on the edge of the stars, and then he's doing rituals with that. Like that's intended to make contact with crap that's out there.
But okay, let's look at it from this point of view, Caleb. This John Dee, what was his position in court, or what do you want to call it? It was he
Well,
must
he
have been a
was
knowledge master in some sort, or a court astrologer, maybe.
yeah, he was a court astrologer, and he signed all of his documents 007,
Oh yeah,
007.
that's
So that's
interesting.
where that comes from. Comes from him.
Oh shit. You know,
There's a guy. um, there's a dude who supposedly is the modern day 007.
hmm
And what he says is that since John D. Um, John D. trained one person to be the 007,
of
and he
course.
trained him in Enochian magic. And then that one person eventually trained one other person. So it's only been like one at a time ever since John Dee's day. So it's they teach them the magic
Yeah. And he becomes
down through
zero
the
zero 007.
generations.
The 006 becomes
So yeah,
007
so
later, right?
England has always had one zero zero. England has always had one 007
Mm.
until now, and then the the last one they trained defected, and now he makes YouTube videos.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah, that's what he claim.
I
That's what he claims. So he claims that he says, yeah, I was the last one. He says that his teacher was Colin Bloy. I don't know if you've ever heard of him,
no Bloy.
but like he was the last one, and
Okay.
then he defected. So now he goes to England every summer to do black magic on England because he doesn't like England anymore.
Okay. I have to just put a reference or a contrast to this. We also had this kind of not court astrologer, but he was there was a family in Sweden that was established to become the keepers of knowledge. and they are called Oxenstierna, the ox star in English. That's their after name. If you go down to Gamla stan or the old town in Sweden, you can find that the king is situated on one side, and the other side you can see Oxenstierna. You know, they are like two pillars. Uh,
Hmm.
and the interesting about Oxenstierna family is that they branch out, and different, you know, a family can be very big, like a tree. So each branch of the family has their own knowledge base. Like those are the forester and biological guys. Those are the industry guys, you know, with the steel, iron, minerals, whatever. You know, so you have different boat building branch, etc., etc. So every person. This was established during the Vasa family, of course, but this is probably a system that was created even within the Viking age. Also, very interesting. I just because if you go down to Old Town in Stockholm, you can see the entire history of Sweden there in symbolical terms, almost. Um, very.
I hate to do this to you, man, but in order for this to really go in deep, you're gonna have to talk about the sperm.
We call it svärd. You know how we give our family name from the boys in the Western world, or maybe throughout the entire
Yeah,
world.
yeah.
I
Well, Denmark and I know Denmark and some of the other Scandinavian countries, they have a weird, strange system for names where they end up with like 20 middle names, but it keeps all of the different family names going. So, uh, but yeah, what you're talking about is like you just get your father's last name and that's
yes,
it.
exactly, and it has to do with the tradition of it has to do with the sperm, because that's like the core. I can say it like this: you sound like your father more than you know uh, how can I tell this? You know, I have brothers from different fathers, and what I notice is that where we originate from the same sort of sperm or same father, we sound much more alike. And there's something to keeping a sperm line like in the heathen world, because it's gonna this is my thinking. I'm just thinking like it stays in its more original form more than the females, because they don't have the raw material to create a child. It's something on that kind of level, because the sperm contains the soul. uh, but the female story is
Well,
very magical also, and the
yeah.
respect of the sperm, and the Ouroboros and all of this from the heathen world. This takes time to understand why they would have such a taboo and absurd kind of system where everything was so evaluated when it comes to sperm. You could, if you threw it away, that's the biggest blasphemy or heresy almost, because
Mm.
you're gonna lose soul power if you do so. You're gonna be less and less able to speak. It's about speech, because that's the magical thing about the human being, that that's our most foremost gift if you compare it to the rest of the nature on this planet. um, so the speech has to it's connected with the sperm. the aristocratic world, they are so formal and they are really sharp with speak and you know, this kind of
We'll talk
yeah.
about the offering system a little bit.
Yeah, it the entire structure is the offering system.
Well, just spit it out, man.
Yeah, the caravan, like we talked about before, contained also the transition of sperm, but it was contained within people. So if you have 10 soldiers, soldier, soldier, alltså dia means to suck or extract, and sol is sun. So the soldier is the ordinary infantry, you know, the infant.
The king would get
Yeah,
uh,
but you have
the
10.
sperm.
You have the captain, the captain. You know, it divides on 11 or 10. You have 10 people, the soldier, and then you have the captain. You know.
Well, the thing that's interesting to me is that, to put it bluntly, the king, or correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be the king who would be the end user, so to speak, of the
Yes.
okay. So the king would have
The Soul
sperm
King.
in his mouth from a lot of
No,
people.
it's a compressed
No.
thing. You see,
Well,
you
I mean, but all yeah, but like contained within that, that's coming from
yes,
a lot of different people,
from
right?
all the people on the planet.
That would okay. So that all right, and that would actually put a lot more emphasis on um, responsibility towards one's own health and things like that,
I
because
think it has to do with information.
obviously, if somebody tried to open a McDonald's, the king would have that shit shut down pretty quick, because be like,
Mm,
nope, you guys can't
no,
be sitting there chomping on fucking McDonald's.
you know,
You know,
we
and
had
expect
obligations.
to be.
If you look at the heathen worlds, there are some obligations. When you become myndig, it's the name for becoming like an adult in Swedish still today. Myndig, but you can also inmyndiga. Alltså myndiga is a mouth, or a minning is an opening. So everyone has to be a part of the offering system. But if the shield, the helmet were collecting, like it was a symbol that you are a collector. You are like one, it's like in the military system. One guy drinks from 10 guys, and then he offers up, and that guy he offers up to drinks from 10 other guys. And so it goes all the way up from 10, the 10 tin tio, which is the 10 brothers in between in the Bock system. You have the Solbockenbalder, he's the youngest son. He has the lance or the lance as a symbol, and he often has a shield. He's called Balder in Swedish. But and the Månbockenbalder, he is the firstborn son. He represent the moon, and are sort of, he is not permitted to have any children because it's his youngest brother in the system that does that, the Soldieren or the Solbockenbalder, the soul. He sort of creates he's the allfather figure later on, the Santa Claus kind of figure, gubben. But anyway,
Did any of this offering system continue after the pole shift?
yes, within the, you know, the Aser family, according to Bok Saga, they stayed and kept the system pure, but they wasn't so many, so it was very easy to contain the soul or the seed, so they kept it very very high. But the difference between the 10 tropical kingdoms that you know, wasn't in the ice, they went with the other kind of system. they corrupted the system straight away, because they have this kind of king system where the king is the ruler but also the breeder. So he
Hmm.
represents both the Sol and Moon, the Sol and Moon.
Do we know whereabouts in the tropics that these 10
Yeah,
tribes were at?
the Asian
Where?
people, the Indian people also, the Red Indians, the Aztec, Maya, Inca, three different. We have the Polynesians, it's one kingdom. What more do we have?
So all of the tropics,
Yeah,
basically.
the different. So you have, but on the America you have the Aztec, Maya, Inca, three different also.
Okay.
Uh, but you have,
Yeah,
you can
because in
count
a
them.
way, though, in a way, the tropics are more akin, environmentally, um,
To
to what
paradise.
the North used to be.
Yeah, the paradise. But they were, the
Right.
information creation, the head of the system was sitting up in Odenma or Hell, which is Finland. And when you cut off the head from the body, you know, it becomes something new. So when Sweden and Denmark was created, they copied the tropical system.
Well, the reason I brought this up is because, as you know, I I do the Van Helsing Library,
Mm.
and it's looking into the fact and fiction regarding vampires. And I wondered to myself, if because there are certain historical personages who come from certain families
They call
that
them vampires.
practice vampires blood drinking.
Mm.
Um, I wondered if blood drinking is a corruption of the
Purely.
offering
Of
system
course.
to where, yeah,
It wouldn't fit
to where
within
it
the
went
symbology
corrupt.
otherwise. Because what the Freemasons or the Templars did, they knew that they had to work with symbolism and the unconscious. So what they did when they created, you know, cathedrals or, whatever within the, what do you call it, the architectural style, the Baroque, this kind of architecture, the architecture that is, you can see within the Roman Empire, you can see it even up here in Stockholm, you can see it in the old cities of Europe, for example, Prague, very beautiful, Ireland, Dublin, very beautiful, riddled with symbolism. And those were places where the original Templars worked. I would say that the entire Templar system sort of collapsed with Napoleon and the revolution starting in France. Probably a little bit before, but we can see with Adam Weishaupt and the movement and the proof of the letters and the plans for the revolution is just telling in itself that the government or the power in France discovered, but they ridiculed it because they thought this could never happen. Revolution,
Mm.
but it happened, and we can see the power. Napoleon, he's nothing else but an king in his own self. They took over the power. Some other force took over the power in Europe because France was the sort of the center of the European power on a more practical sense. Meanwhile, Sweden is more an ideological and philosophical, very sort of progressive country, you could say, with the innovation and yeah, top innovation. So every sphere has its own purpose, but it started in France, really going bad for the Templars from the original power base. And this is what I've been talking about for years, you know, about the how those Templar networks were taking over from the top, useful idiots going ahead. Yeah, it's taking over the power structure that is so brilliantly worked out that is now. But this is what's conflicting me a little bit about this Wallenberg family that is sort of in control of the world almost today when it comes to information and has been for 100 years. I mean, it's whose side are they on? What's the point? What's their agenda? So I'm not sure because all of the sudden, Caleb, those figure has they have become a public figure. You can see they broadcast, they are being a part of documentaries now when they open up the family archives and telling what has been going on. And you know, they are working against their own motto. So maybe they have been changing their motto also. Because I also saw that the Wallenberg family, they married into a noble house from Sweden that is called Bonde. It's the same rulers that control Sweden before the Vasa family, sort of. So you can see how the power shift has been going a little bit back and forth between two different forces in Sweden also. You have like the heathen forces and the Catholic forces working within. And now the sort of the Catholic forces has been taking over again as I see it since the 1800, or the religious forces. And now the heathen forces are sort of working its ways. I don't know, but they really want to stamp out all the heathen. This is they are still in a war with the heathens.
Are you familiar with the concept of the fourth sect and the fifth sect?
I think you had talked about it.
And I guess the third sect, original Judaism
Oh,
was the third sect, and then um, the fourth sect was, and this is coming from Ralph Ellis and Michael Desarian, mostly Ralph Ellis, but Michael Desarian's kind of elaborated on it. So there were the Jews during the Roman Empire. That was the third sect.
what Roman
And
Empire?
then
There has been many.
uh, the
Just say a date and I will call it for you.
70 AD.
70 AD. Okay, the original.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Because the Roman
yeah,
Empire collapsed year 300.
right,
And then it became a Holy Roman Empire. Just to make
right.
sure.
Let
Yeah.
me elaborate on this.
Okay, I'm just gonna put it straight. Okay.
Yes, that's correct. Well, so third sect was the Jews who were around during the Roman Empire. The fourth sect was Jesus, who actually was from uh, a convergence of several royal dynasties. So he had bloodlines connected to several royal dynasties, Parthian, Egyptian, uh, going to ancient civilizations, right? But he was lineage
Hmm.
to that, so he had a lot of nobility. Um, he wanted to challenge Rome, so in order to do that, he um, decided that he would need to enlist the help of the Jews because the Jews were uh, kind of itching for a fight, anyways. So they would basically be warm bodies for cannon fodder. So what Jesus did was to sort of fashion himself into a personality which matched a lot of what they looked to for a prophecy. And he kind of strode in, and they looked up to him as like fulfilling their prophecies. So he was able to take command um, and lead a rebellion against Rome with Jews as cannon fodder. And when he failed, they crucified him but didn't kill him. Then they sent him to prison in England, like the maximum security prison, like furthest away from Rome. And he died there. But afterwards, they hired a scribe to craft a story about Jesus, which um, which painted him as a pauper Prince of Peace who turns the other cheek and advises his followers to give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, but who's like this really holy guy. And they said, yeah, write this story and make Jesus into this kind of person and hand it to the Jews, because we want to actually pacify the Jews and give them a story that does not include any ideas that might inspire rebellion against Rome.
I
We
see.
just want happy Jews, not angry Jews.
Oh my
So
God.
they created the scribe wrote the gospel story, and then they gave that to the Jews, and then 250 years later, the Roman Empire collapsed and the Christians took over.
Oh my
So
God.
so so okay, all right. So let me finish real quick. Uh, that's the fifth sect.
This is
The
very fucking
the
interesting, Caleb. I mean,
the church. All right. See how that flows. The original Jews, those are the third sect. Jesus and the rebellion, that's the fourth sect. The church is the fifth sect. Now get this. Roman Empire collapses, church emerges.
yes,
Europe is ruled by the fifth sect from
yes,
that point forward
the Catholics.
until 1,000 years later.
Yes,
When the Crusades happen, the fourth sect comes back.
yes,
The Jesus crowd, the original Jesus crowd, weird royal dynasty shit, all kinds of weird shit. But because you got to remember, Jesus was only pretending to be Jewish and shit because he needed cannon fodder. His actual cultic affiliations and whatnot are way stranger than anything that we would even think about. Um, so when the fourth sect came back into what you're probably looking at, man, as far as like Napoleon and all of this assassin stuff and the Jesuits, that's fourth sect stuff, man. And I think a lot of the inquisitions that happened, uh, because the anti-witch sentiment was on low heat for the first 700
but
years.
this is the thing about
After the
his.
crus
Oh, I'm not
after
gonna
the
cut you off, but
Crusades, okay, go ahead.
no, no, no. Go finish your line. I'm just, I had this. I just wanted to make a short mythological background on Jesus from the Bock Saga, just to sort of also give some velocity to what you're saying. Um, Jesus, he was the grandson of God in the Finnish mythology, and the thing about him, he was very inspired by what Krishna did. The Christ. Vi säger Krist när du är kristen. When you're Christian in Swedish, like Christ. It's a crisis. The Krishna from Hindustan, he killed the heathendom there And the rabbis in the pagan system of India became exiled. So they were searching for somewhere to go, the rabbis, who became the gypsies, but also known as Jews. And they were a very high breed, so to speak, within the Hindu system. And when they heard about this Christ, or the Jesus, because is the he was also going with this Christ story, the Christ in Swedish means crisis. Christ. But sort of to give because in this story, this Jesus figure, he was only put to a shame pole and thrown tomatoes on, and sort of being shamed by the Jews because they didn't like this kind of story because it reminded them of what happened back in their motherland, so
Right.
you see, that's the Bock Saga perspective.
Well, these etymologies go back
Yeah.
far, and it interweaves and intertwines
Yeah, with India, for
so
fuck's
much
sake. I mean,
further back than any of
Krishna.
this.
Because the
Yeah.
Krishna, he started the first priest class, which is called the Brahman priest. So it's very like. But Caleb, I need
Yeah,
to fucking go to the
it's
toilet.
probably where
I
that
need to go to the
word comes
toilet.
from
Yeah, it is.
originally.
Okay, just hold this thought. I'm gonna take a pee. Be back in like 1 minute. Hold on.
Okay, we're gonna pause the recording. Okay.
Caleb, the first Christian king of Sweden was called Valdemar. I just had to. In English, Valdemar become alltså val is to choose, and mardröm is a nightmare. It's something really bad. Valdemar.
Oh, yeah. There's that connects with something that I've been thinking about lately. Is that one of the biggest things that you read about with witches is the idea that they steal your breath.
Yeah, the
And
spirit.
the Mara was a creature that would sit on your chest at night and give you a nightmare, but at the same time it was taking your breath away.
A mardröm
And
is nightmare in Swedish. Dröm is a
yeah,
dream.
you get these stories in different records because people used to be pretty scared of witches
Yeah.
back in the day for different reasons, what they thought that the witches could do to them.
They put a spell on you. Spel. Spel in Swedish means games. Spell.
It means gaze.
Game. Games.
Game.
Yeah. A game.
Huh.
Spel. And in German, Spiel. Spell. You play games with the ignorant. Spell.
Hmm.
It's a game. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because it's very practical. You can sort of, I did this during when I went in the ground school. I sort of was this hidden actor. I was a sort of this joker character, but I often played games where I could put people against each other without, you know, just to it. What you can do this with people. It's called divide and conquer almost. Yeah, it's but in the more practical sense. You can see they playing
Yep.
the spel with the political game. It's a game. It's a spel also where you have two opposing sides, like in soccer. It's this old fucking spell. It's
Well, yeah, because take think about it to taking the breath away. If you take people's ability to relate to each other through speech away,
yeah.
then that's the biggest divide and conquer thing that you can do.
That's what the church has
Because
been doing across the Europe.
yeah, because really, um, if you can speak and you can listen, and then you can work through anything.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the ability to speak and listen, you can't work through anything.
I say that to, when you have like a girlfriend or when you're in a relationship, I always say communication is the most important part of the relationship. And it's very true, I think. You know, it it's like in the power structure or the power in what is real power. I mean, we can vote every fourth year for a political party to speak their voice for you or whatever. But where does the real power lay? I mean, for me, that's very obvious. It's in the freedom of information and the freedom of speech and the freedom of communication. That's what I stand for. I've been voting for one party in my life, and it's called the Pirate Party, Piratpartiet. But their core, you know, note point or their core value, their only point is to keep the internet open and free, without any censorship, without any barriers. That's what they stand for,
Yeah.
and I'm all
Well,
for that.
I think a more grassroots system, even more person to person, like physical encounter speech, is something that is needed.
Yeah.
And there's a YouTube channel called Brehon Academy, and Brehon is from Ireland because Ireland used to have Brehons, and they had a system of law there, and they actually had hospitality laws to where uh, travelers always had a place to stay for free. There would be houses, um, and the people who would maintain these houses, say you owned property, if you built a hospitality house on your property, which furnished the basic essentials for travelers to stay as long as they wanted, um, and this was codified to where there had to be uh, food on the stove, like there had to be stew, there had to be meat, there had to be spare cattle out there to be slaughtered in case they needed more meat. Bed, you know, and it would basically just be a place where you could stay if you're traveling, and it's not going to be a 5-star hotel, but this would be a place where you would meet people and be able to speak and whatnot. But the person who owned it and managed it, they would get tax exemption. I'm pretty sure that's how it worked. But they got perks, or they were incentivized to keep these places. And the Brehan was kind of like a dispute resolver. So if you had a dispute with someone that you couldn't resolve on your own, uh, you could go to a Brehan and they would offer counsel and wisdom in the best manner they could, and sometimes even make legal decisions on issues. And compared to that, the culture and society we live in is under lockdown, like in a much tighter sense. And not even talking about the lockdowns from this recent thing, but our whole society going back quite a long time has been way tighter. Um, you may have had more openness under certain Protestant Christian type of communities, but that's where basically everybody was on the same page, anyways. Now we have so many different people who are so on so many different pages that, but we're all interacting and cooperating with each other
It's a complete different
because
situation today.
yeah, because we have this really tight control factor as far as like um,
Yeah, but
under
at the
and
same
those in
time,
those days, like under the ancient Ireland Brehon days, like if you there would be zero reason why you couldn't just stop stop the next person you walk by and just start talking about the mysteries of the universe. But if you do that today while you're walking down a sidewalk, or if you're in a cafe or whatever, and you just try to approach some random person and talk to them face to face about something that's deep, besides the weather or besides who's in office, like something like you and me are having this conversation. Um, you know, 3,000 years ago in Ireland, I would not need to have a cell phone to talk to a guy in Sweden to have a real conversation. Um, you know, 6,000 miles away from you right now, I guess, or however
something like that.
far away we are. I could just basically strike up a conversation with anyone. Now
Yeah.
somebody would think I was trying to get them to join a cult
No.
or some weird shit. It's like,
But that's the weird thing when you talk, trying to get into the head of how you thought like only 500 years ago. Imagine without any newspapers, any internet, any of this quick access to information. It was none. So the only thing that could give you information was other people. And maybe if you were literate within like a shaman that could interpretate rune stones or this kind of means of communication, or like the Bible, but that's
yeah,
another
but
aspect.
you had all right. So when you read about ancient cultures, um, they tunnel vision into specific regions. Like you'll read about the ancient Germans, and then they'll say, "Yeah, we know what we know about the ancient Germans from what the Romans wrote about them."
Exactly, that's how
And
they
then
do it.
they'll zoom into
From their perspective
North
also.
America. Well, let me finish this.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, basically we have this habit of zooming into a certain time and a certain place and saying, yeah, we know what we know based on this.
Yeah.
But comparative religion and comparative mythology shows you that although each place was unique, their cultural motifs and stories and mythologies could not have been uh, very disconnected because they're so similar in so
Yeah.
many points. Now, take that into consideration and the fact that the assumption that widespread cultures were not in contact with each other is a wrong one
Yeah, there
because
are more
there were
evidence showing
travelers.
the, you know,
You
the
can
opposite.
zoom into, so there's no reason to assume that the ancient Germans were not in contact with the Chinese, the
The
South
Silk Road has been
Americans.
going for 10,000s of years, I think, since the Ice Age sort of collapsed. I think.
We assume that the Chinese were not even aware that the Native Americans existed. We assume that, but there's no reason to assume that based on the
But it's
fact that there was travel.
yeah, but they
So
have been trying to
there's
tell
no
us that the
reason
Earth
to
is like
assume
4,000 years old, also, like something like that. You know, it's like complete bogus because, yeah,
the Irish, man, they were the Phoenicians and they knew how to travel the seas.
yeah, the
Now,
Vikings
what's to
also.
say?
But the Irish are as much Vikings as the fucking Danish Vikings, as the Swedish Vikings, but they collapsed much before. That's how I see it. You know, Ireland has
Right.
probably been fighting for the heathen world also. Like, for example, it is very known that like the Danish Vikings and also the Swedish, Norwegian Vikings were also present. But I think Ireland, England, you know, the English Isles, Scotland were also Vikings. If you want to look at it from that perspective, so uh, warrior a warrior culture emerged in Europe that you know they and the interesting thing about the heathens or the Vikings is that they were using psychological terror as number one priority in warfare with the hellhounds and the bear skin, you know, all intimidating, you know, the direwolf type wolf. I can imagine that they had warhounds that they because the heathens or the pagans were really good at breeding, you know, types of animals. They knew how to even take, you know, create new kinds of animals to fit their purpose. I think
Yeah,
this,
well, you look at the Gallic Wars where um, Carthage was Celtic. Carthage was on the north part of Africa, and they were a rival to Rome for um, boat dominance. They had more boats than Rome did,
hmm,
and Rome decided to start. I don't remember exactly how it went down, but they had this big war, and Hannibal uh, took a bunch of elephants, sailed to Spain, and brought an army over the Alps with elephants and everything. And like a third of his army died, or 2/3 of his army died, something like that. Got to the other side with whatever was left of his army and freaking used elephants against Rome.
yeah, the power base. Uh, I think they have been changing the power base also. But I just want to mention when we are at the Viking Age and this war, you know, the Silk Route, this ancient trade that were going through the steppes of Russia via like the those kind of river system there in Russia down to the Black Sea and down to the Mediterranean, and you know, going through this kind of gap in the Red Sea through Egypt all the way down to China. The route of this Silk Road, the end of the route was Scotland, actually, via the
Wow.
Finnish, yeah, via where St. Petersburg is today. Uh, but when the Danish Vikings took over, they moved it to Hedeby, which was a part of Denmark at that time. Um, an interesting aspect to put into this, because people think that the Vikings were such fucking, you know, I don't even need to state it at this point, you know, where the mindset are, but as you can see, the theme goes out through the world today that the Vikings are only Vikings, you know, this Viking. As a Viking means we kings. We kings. We two
Hmm.
kings, or we kings, the northern kings, because king titles wasn't handed out lightly, you know.
There's a popular notion that the word Viking, uh, that the Vikings actually didn't call themselves Vikings,
No,
but that's what they would do when they went on a raid. So they wouldn't say, "Hey, let's go on a raid." They would say, "Hey, let's go on a Viking."
it's a joint cause. The kings. It's a joint cause of all the three crowns. The three crowns of Sweden symbolizes we king. We kings. You know, if you look at hockey today, they call it Tre Kronor, the three crowns. If you see the Swedish national hockey team, so to speak, they have the three crowns on the chest. But that symbol represent the Danish, the Swedish, and the Finnish. But the Finnish and the Russians were the same during the early Viking Age, you could say.
Is that what the three lions represent?
Probably. No, the Norwegian, they had like three leopards, but if you had three lions, it should be that. Yes, I would argue for
I
that.
was thinking of the flag. I'm not sure if it's lions or leopards.
Yeah, but the leopard is a very, you know, they did everything not to include that into the heraldry in Sweden. The Danish slash
How come?
Norwegian. I don't know, man, but they, you know, they were very picky with all of this symbolism. Uh, if I've been reading all Herman Lindqvist, he's like a lead historian on the history of Sweden today, and looking through his work, because he's a journalist that has been going through the archives and showing what really has been going on, very like abstract, and from a point of view of looking into the letters that has been communicated between the different king houses, and you know, I mean, if you really take a look at what happened, you sort of get the mindset also during the time. And when I'm talking now, I'm talking about 1500, 1540 and onward. Sweden had like a royal archive where all letters were archived that were going in and through the country. So we get a exact, or a very clear picture of the communication, so to speak. Because the
Hmm.
most foremost weapon of the Vasa kings is the pen and paper. They they use this more than the sword. Uh,
I had a buddy who was in the Army Rangers, and he said that even when he was hundreds of miles behind enemy lines, his biggest weapon was his silver tongue.
yeah. Uh, but I thought, you know, this is you know, Europe's history sort of began 1500, or the more academic. uh, something really big happened during this time with the printing press, and this is very. I think it's the most interesting part of history to research because there's so much to go into there, and the power change that happened because they wanted to empower humanity, or the Europeans at least, but I think it's a global cause, and that's why you have the culture of philanthropy in Sweden and all of this. It's that's why I'm so sure about the Wallenberg's purpose today, because through time, I mean, agendas that has been happening 300 years ago, 200 years ago, it can take another lead and change due to each generation, dependent on how you marry in and the ancestral callings that those individuals get. And I've been fucking researching, and I've been listening to all of those guys, but they are still active today. The powerhouse of the Western world seems to reside in Stockholm. It's a conclusion I have been putting. They want to. Sweden and Schweiz was the two neutral countries during World War II. Isn't that interesting, Caleb? Based on what I told you about the two
Well,
towers.
Switzerland was,
Yeah, Switzerland
right?
and Sweden was the neutral countries in Europe during World War II,
Oh yeah.
where the two towers resides.
Oh yeah. The two towers. You know the World Trade Center thing.
Yeah.
Um, if you go on Wikipedia, that wasn't the only World Trade Center.
Okay.
Like their Wikipedia has a list of like all the different World Trade Centers, and most of them are two towers.
But the World Bank is situated in Schweiz, Switzerland.
Hmm.
It still is there today. It connects all
Is it two
banks.
towers?
It was a tower before Tolkien came along.
Huh.
It's very symbolical because one is controlled by the other. The Baradur Tower, situated in Stockholm, the Baradur, the Svitz Tower was overthrown and taken control of by the Baradur Tower.
What about the Isengard Tower?
Yeah, that's the tower I'm talking about, being like the puppet,
Oh, okay.
because it was taken over by the Baradur Tower.
Hmm.
I think Tolkien knew about those things and put it into a mythology perspective, because if this telecom company, Ericsson, were to cover the globe, they would have total insight in everything. And it's even worse today with the technocratic world we live in, because it's all based on the same infrastructure, the infrastructure that was laid over 100 years ago.
So one of these towers is in Stockholm, and the
Yeah,
other
in Schweiz,
tower is in Switzerland.
exactly, on a
Okay.
symbolical level. But it's just interesting that the first tower that was built was an actual tower in Switzerland.
Yeah. Well, Ireland has the round towers,
Yeah, but
and
a
the
tower, yeah,
entrances. Yeah, the entrances are so high that you have to use a ladder to get to the door, and then once you get up there, there's stairways that go all the way to the top.
mm,
And then in Scotland, there's Brochs, 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 but they're all so
the
old
Bok.
that they're Brock,
Yeah, Bok. You
but it
have the
could be
Brock,
related.
Brock,
Could be
Bok,
related.
Brock. Yeah, of course.
The biggest one that's left is so deteriorated that There's not much left of it, and all of the other ones are even more deteriorated. But looking at that picture, it looks like it could be the foundation for a really tall tower. They say that it was only up to a certain level, used as a raised platform to sort of look out over sea. But just looking at it, it looks like it could have been the foundation for something really tall.
You know the tower card in the tarot? The
Yeah.
lightning strikes the tower. I think they understood that they needed to go underground and not be in the public, so this kind of old kind of way of rulership, like from the heathen world, for example, the Månbocken, or the ruler king, he was ruling from his golden tower, and it was
Hey man,
situated on a lake called Rasipuri. In the Rasipuri castle in Finland, it's situated on an old lake, so you will get the amplifying sound going out through. You know how you can hear how someone speaks that are out in the water. There's no like hindrances or anything in the way, so the sound will travel across the water like really good. So to have an island with a tower, and then speaking from the tower inside of a lake, for example, you could speak to everyone situated around the lake.
hmm.
So,
Yeah.
so this is the old way of rulership, when you are really visible, you're in the open, everyone can see you. But now, when the heathen world sort of collapsed, and you have a really strong populace, and you're gonna enforce a sort of a change in the rulership that is really gonna sort of give the quality of life in the populace and decrease. Uh, you sort of need to work in the shadows, and this is really interesting. This need to work in the shadows is obvious enough for me to state that those guys want to hide something. Those guys, the only way they can operate without getting the populace against them are to act in the shadows. And then we go back to the Wallenberg and their motto. Their family motto is to act without being seen. Uh, there's a Latin word for it, but I fucking hate Latin, so I don't even go into it. Uh,
Hmm.
but I think we found the power brokers of Europe, because I actually have on paper everything I talk about that I can show, but it will get very boring very easily, because it's another. I've been trying to make a video, Caleb, on this, like a professional kind of, more David Whitehead kind of documentary that are in
Yeah.
English, because I reckon that, or I noticed that everyone speaking against, and putting the Wallenbergs into light, they do it only in Swedish, and I'm like, holy fuck, people need to know about this. So I think I will do justice to those guys to try to share it to the world in an English perspective, so I can translate it all. But it ties into so much else I've been talking about through the years. So it has been a leading up to thing, almost like a destiny thing, I think. To look in your backyard, it's like something that Michael Tsarian really uh, made my life change. Don't look in Egypt, don't look in India, don't look. Just look in your own fucking backyard is his motto, sort of. Uh,
Hmm.
at least that
Yeah.
he told to me. But I
I mean,
wanted to make a
if everybody listening to this interview would get a map of where they live, draw a circle, say 50 miles in diameter, or say 100 miles in diameter
Yeah, but just the
around
country
where
you're
they
in.
live.
Just focus on the country you live in.
Well. I've had this idea for a little while now. Um, this is a challenge. Draw a big circle around where you live and find every Masonic lodge,
Yeah.
every secret society, meeting place, every cult, every headquarters for religious organizations and everything, and start filling that map up.
Good.
And
Good point, Caleb.
yeah,
At
do
least
it.
the city you live in. I mean, I live in a very, this is the most progressive town in all of Europe. It was named the cultural capital of Europe, the city I live in. I'm like, what the fuck? This Umeå is becoming the cultural capital of Europe. I'm like, okay. And it's a very small town, and it's an academic town. The entire town is built on academy. And I'm like the yeah, but anyway, I wanted to make a point, Caleb, that is really interesting. Saga was mentioned on Joe Rogan podcast.
Oh, really?
Because of me and Andy
Oh, wow.
and Don. Because I've been making like a couple of podcasts talking about Saga with some Americans, Don and Andy, great guys. But we were invited to the Tinfoil Hat podcast. And
Hmm.
this guy, uh, Tripoli is his after name. He, like a week after or 2 weeks after our interview, he went on to Joe Rogan podcast, and they are like old friends, it seems. So now the Saga is even getting attention on the main scene. I think it's
Wow.
really interesting to see where this will lead.
Are
Because
you wanting to go on the Joe Rogan podcast?
I could do that. Talk about Saga. Talk about Sweden and its history.
Maybe.
Maybe we will see where
Yeah,
fate leads us.
maybe.
Maybe. I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
He asked Yoba, "Hey, dude," because they were talking about ancient civilizations and so, and Tripoli, you said, "Hey, yo, have you heard about Bok Saga?" And Joe Rogan is sort of distracted at the point when he's telling that, and then they cut to like a break, and then they just continue with something else. I'm like, what the fuck?
Sorry, we're having technical difficulties back here. Cut.
I got that feeling a little bit actually, but he mentioned the Bok Saga. He said it.
Oh, that's cool.
That's cool. I think if they
Yeah,
have
well,
like,
they put it on. My friend sent me a newspaper clipping. She lives in England, and it was on the front page news about the treasure trove, and it had pictures of Jim and everybody.
mm,
Front page news. She was she got up and went to the train station, and there was a newspaper sitting there, big giant front page of the newspaper. And this was like about it was earlier this year. It was like 3 or 4 months ago,
mm-hmm.
maybe even 5 months ago. Yeah, I don't know if you caught that or not, but
I hear you.
it's kind of getting out there now.
Yeah, it does. But I think it's dangerous also because I see a lot of corruption and people don't have like the cognitive mentality to even grasp it, because as soon as they hear it, they go straight like they don't sit back and configure it like we should, you know. And if you don't have the Swedish, I don't know. I'm just I'm so affected by the olders because they want to keep it so fucking pure, and Of course, there's room to make mistakes, but Box Saga is a sacred thing for me, and I don't even want to throw it around very much because it's so you need to be very precise when you work with it.
And I would advise looking for a very precise audience. And the unslaved audience is a good audience.
Yeah.
But with what I'm doing, I haven't even got very much interest in what I'm doing from that audience. I'm still looking for the right audience
I think
to.
it's also the way we present it, Caleb. I mean, to find the right format to do things. I think the best way is to do like we do now, with open hearts and without any script. So we talk from the stomach, you could say, going with our guts and accumulating, and it's sort of just an ordinary conversation we're having like now. This is like how I would see we were communicating if we ever met, in real life. We're just sitting here and
Right.
talking, and we don't have any script. There's no talking points, nothing like that. I think that's a really good format. But I don't know. It's an experiment also, because people are so used to also this more structure, presentive ways. But I like this more casual, laid back, talking from the. It becomes like compressed wisdom or compressed knowledge when you're talking from your own intuition. Uh, I like it.
Yeah, and yeah, and that's been kind of the case as far as like some of my favorite some of the best things that I've come across were presented in that way, sort of like
It could.
this
Yeah.
presentation that Ted Gunderson did, where he just interviewed this guy, and I don't know if you've heard of Ted Gunderson, but he
Yes.
used to be. Yeah, okay, so you are familiar with that.
Yeah, you have been talking about him,
Yeah,
and
one
also
time he
Michael
did
a
an
little bit.
interview. Yeah, one time he did an interview with a guy that I don't know where he found this guy, um, but he got him on and interviewed him. And this dude was a mathematical genius who ended up decoding this whole system of ley lines and everything. But they had like a 4 hour interview, and they're basically just sitting down like you and me are doing, and
It's the most
this
honest
guy
way.
was able to. Yeah.
You can hear this is a really interesting concept Matthias Andersson talked about, who has been introduced me to the Wallenberg and their world domination. Uh, he's talking about the weight in worlds. It's something that comes from the Greek mythology about the Pandora's box and Prometheus suffering on the mountaintop, and an eagle eats his liver every day, every sunrise. Comes and picks a little bit of his liver. But that, in a symbolical perspective, is that Prometheus, he wanted to take the powers from the gods and give it to the mortals. Um, and that act is a power transfer from the gods to the mankind or the mortals. And he gets punished by the gods for this, and is put on this mountain to suffer each morning for his betrayal. But Prometheus has a brother, as a Prometheus. Metheus means to, as a pro is to be pro something, and Metheus is like I don't know how to put it. I'm not very good, but it has to be the thing or the what do you call the compression of this is that his brother, he is the one that sits and thinks, and is the more strategical, and he doesn't live in the now like Prometheus, and he's the front figure, Prometheus, But his brother, he is the guy who works in the shadows that thinks maybe 100 years ahead. But Prometheus' brother has to, he compress all his bad feelings, everything that he has been going through, like the underworld experience and all of those concepts that you need to suffer in order to evolve, or in order to sort of become stronger. He puts all those emotions, those bad fucking emotions, into the Pandora's box and give the Pandora's box to his brother. His name is also Pro something, or Mephius something, I don't remember. But anyway, when his brother opened his box, the box of the Pandora, he gets overwhelmed by those bad feelings, you know, like we're looking into all those dark sides of history. The same kind of concepts emerge when you open the Pandora's box. And to live through that, you know, he experienced his brother's, experience. I don't know where I was going with this, but I think it's a really interesting concept in order to, you know, for example, a tree that is standing on a hilltop, that is really, the wind and the nature is really rough on that tree, but if it survives and thrives, it becomes even stronger than their brothers in the valley. You know, it's a very interesting concept and a very inspiring concept. I'm gonna put some links. The sad thing about Matthias, I've been trying to get in contact with him so I can sort of bring him to the international audience, but I don't know, man. He's like me. He's hiding under a rock.
Yeah.
But he makes some really good. He's a really a fucking hero for the Swedish people. I can tell you, this guy Matthias. I cannot enlighten him, enough, because he's been making over 100 videos on YouTube, and are really doing a good job for the Swedish people. And I want to share his information with the rest of the English speaking community. But we will see. It's interesting times, Caleb. Very interesting times.
Yep.
And we can see now the hydras are even more colored throughout the world. We can see it's a very interesting time to live, I think, because we are getting confirmations about everything. You know, Caleb, haven't you been a part of the truth conspiracy, the truth society, so to speak, for like 10 years also, like me now?
2009 is when I got into Jordan Maxwell and Michael Desarian and
Yeah,
everything.
it's over 10 years, and I'm in the same. We're like the same. We're in the same platoon, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 90-talister, or the people that are born in the 90s, that were a part of the transition into this more modern world. It's we who have one foot in the old world and one in the new world. It's gonna be like that, and that's a interesting. It's a very heavy. It's a very, very heavy burden.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Caleb, you're doing a really good job. We're gonna round this off now, so we're getting into too many subjects already. So my mind is all over the place. You know, my stepfather used to tell me, you know, we just talked about another subject, and now you go to the next subject, and he gets fucking mad at me. But I'm like, we need to understand all those kind of subjects to get to the point. To get to, because everything can be put on a table and sort of be sorted out, if you ask me. Oh, like a field marshal title in the highest military rank in Sweden, you needed to have the complete oversight. Cultural, historical, military, religious, all kind of branches in a society. The entire structure that creates what it is needed to embark on those big questions, I think. to see it from all angles and how you can use it, or from a power perspective, then to understand what power is. um, Very, it's field martial. It's like a martial artist. He needs to know every aspect, every type. Martial, field martial art. Can you see the correlation?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we should leave it there.
Yes.
Okay, Caleb. Fucking love talking to you, man.
Yeah, it's good talking to you.
That's good. I hope you're doing all right over there in the Holy Land, the cursed land.
Yeah. Oh, I'm doing good. I was at the gym yesterday, so I'm a little sore.
Okay.
But
that's a part. I like to be angry
yeah.
also. That's when you progress. Take some leaps forward.
Yep.
All right, man. I'm gonna cancel the stream now.
All right, man.
All right. Thanks for everyone listening.
Go brew some tea.
This is the third episode on our yeah.
I hope you're not running out of tea materials.
No. I have so much of it. But this is like our third.
Are you good for the year?
Yeah, I'm good for the year. This is our third episodes. I think that's
Good
a
deal.
big, the third. Everything good comes in three, my mother always told me. And also the bad.
Yep.
So this is the conclusion.
That's what I've heard.
This is the conclusion of the circle we started with the first episode. In my eyes. All right, Caleb. I talk to you soon again.
This concludes the trilogy.
Yeah, this is the trilogy. Okay.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.